I recently watched a movie called Black Panther. And one of the most inspiring things that I've got from the movie is a chant. And I want us to do the chant together. Moifa! Who? Okay. My first introduction to leadership came in primary school when I was made the class captain. And to me, in primary school, what a class captain had to do was just to have a cane and write the names of noisemakers. So it was a very simple thing. What our understanding of leadership was at the time is leadership is about authority. One person in control and everyone else following that control. Years later, I got into secondary school, and I was appointed the refectory prefect, another position. And my grandparents had to call me for a meeting. And I can remember my grandmother's voice while they were trying to advise me. She said, "Do not think that this position is for you to use to oppress people or other people's children. It is a call for responsibility that you have to ensure that everybody has equal access to fairness and justice." And that is what transformed my ideology about leadership. That experience taught me that leadership is not about the privilege, but the responsibility. It is not about having control over people. It is about ensuring that you have something called the care for the people. Leadership became to me a lesson in service. It is the ability to influence, inspire, and coordinate others toward a shared purpose, not through fear, but through fairness. I come from Ohafia, proudly. And Ohafia happens to be a community in Abia State, southeastern Nigeria. And it is often described as the third town in Abia State. Not because of the sheer size of the land, but because of the remarkable self-driven development culture of the people. Our growth has been powered not by the government, but by the collective leadership, which is, of course, the citizens who take responsibility for their community's progress. So for generations, we have sustained a unique culture, something called the age grade system, which is a structure where the people of the same age range come together and they build schools, community halls, roads, and market, and then hand them over to the community or government for management through something called the traditional retirement ceremony called Igboto Mma, loosely translated to be dropping the machete. The ceremony symbolizes that the completion of a season or service marks the transition into senior citizenship. So beyond celebration, it is a testament of accountability, continuity, and collective spirit of progress. Through this cultural system, which generations is taught to think about responsibility, to value community, and of course to serve with joy. It stands today as a living example of one concept called grassroots governance, a society where the shared progress is driven by the people who do not wait for the permission to act, but see service as the highest expression of leadership. The Igbo philosophy where this ideology is drawn from is often summed up with the phrase, Igbo enweze, which is loosely translated to be Igbo has no king. But this does not mean that we are a people who, have order, or we are without order or leadership. It means that we are a people who embody something called democracy in monarchy. So, which is a social order where the voice of the people is guided or guides the throne. So before decisions are made in Igbo land, there must be a representation of thought, of values and vision. This balance of power is collective, but yet coordinated, that enables trade, peace, and conversations around Igbo land. Of course, long before the colonial influence. When I was a child, one of the clearest indications or lessons I learned about unity came from my class teacher. So my class teacher will hold up a broom and then break it easily, and then get a bunch and then tries to break it or bend it. And it was never easy at any point in time to break the bunch. And I grew older, and I realized something even deeper. Do you know that the older brooms are even more difficult to bend or break? So the older the brooms become, the more difficult it is to break. And this taught me something, that the new broom sweeps clean, and the old brooms understands the corners. And there is this adage that says that the new brooms can sweep clean, but the older brooms understand the corners. And you see that the young people come with some level of advancement in technology and maybe something called new knowledge. But the older people come with something called experience. And this is the essence of something I called collectivism. The entirety of our conversation is something called Igwebuike. And Igwebuike means collectivism. And the essence of collectivism is that no matter how skilled you are or talented you are as an individual, there must be a progress that should be driven by something called working together. Collectivism emphasizes the independence of individuals in a group, but then it prioritizes the common goal of everyone. It is built on the understanding that no one succeeds alone. The progress of any community depends on the ability to share responsibility, cooperate in purpose, and act in unity. So in collectivism, leadership is distributed, success is shared, and of course, we've had this all over the conversations that have been coming on this stage today. It is not easy for us to leave our individuality, and I clearly understand that, because each and every one of us come with our unique perspectives. But perspectives must be shared, and perspectives must be adapted. Today, we live in a world that glorifies individuality, where leadership is often mistaken for visibility, and success is measured by how loud one voice can echo. But true impact does not come from one voice shouting. It comes from many voices harmonizing. And all of us, of course, we live in Nigeria today. And we have seen the degradation of the political class, and of course, the political systems. Okay, and these are orchestrated by the unpatriotic ideologies, either led by tribalism or maybe religion. And this has become tools against collectivism. And of course, for us to engage or try to criticize ideologies, we come with something called hate speech. And politics today and political criticisms, as we see on social media today, are all backed by hate speech. So rather than addressing the differing ideologies and offering better solutions, we often resort to insults, personal attacks. And I've come with this notion that when hate becomes our language, then progress, of course, becomes our casualty. Collectivism demands that we protect the dignity of others who believe differently. It asks that we raise our arguments and not our voices. And when we seek progress, we must not seek progress with pride. It does not mean that we will not disagree sometimes. It means that we must disagree, but how we disagree truly matters. So true collective leadership allows us room for diversity of thought. We can challenge ideas without canceling people. We can share our opposing views without hate. And we are allowed to protest And we must be protected when we are protesting. And we've not seen that in our country today. So collectivism thrives not because we all speak in one voice, but because we all speak with respect. And when we understand this, disagreement no longer divides us. It becomes the heat that strengthens our collective resolve, not the fire that burns it down. I've been greatly inspired as an individual by someone called Nelson Mandela. And the story of Nelson Mandela teaches something. That the true measure of a leader is not how much power they hold, but how much power they are willing to share. And perhaps that is the most powerful lesson of all. The real impact is not when people remember who led, but when they remember that they were part of that leadership. So true collectivism must also be transgenerational, just like the old broom and the new broom. The new broom may sweep faster, like I mentioned, but it still needs the old broom to show where the corners are. And there are always those hidden spaces of life, whether in culture and leadership, that only experience can reveal. We must adapt. The old people must allow young people also be in the space of leadership. And that is what collectivism is. Igwebuike is not the sections of the old people who form the caucuses and decide what happens in the country. It means that they must also listen to the voice of the young people and allow them to be on the table. I've always been triggered by this mantra that says the young people are leaders of tomorrow. I do not agree with that because tomorrow never comes. What we need to do is to change the mantra and say that young people are leaders of today because they have to be included in the decision making of today. But beyond collectivism is something called constructivism. Where the gap exists is that sometimes, because of the agitations of our age, we lack the ability to be constructive. So constructivism is a learning theory that says we do not grow by passively receiving knowledge, but by actively building understanding. Igwebuike can only function if there is something called understanding, which means the connection of new ideas, the connection of our past experiences, and shaping meaning through participation, reflection, and shared dialogue. And I want to say this. In leadership and nation building, transformation cannot be handed down like a policy. Because we sit in a country and we sit in parliaments and we develop policies. But true transformation cannot be handed down as policy. It must be constructed collectively because we must understand how these policies interfaces with us and how we can interface with the policies. I speak this way because I sit on the boards of governance. And I've come to understand that there's something called stakeholder engagement. And truly, most times when we try to engage stakeholders, we only want to bring them in the room and tell them what we think is right. But I believe that is wrong. They should be able to also share their own experiences. And that is how collectivism is built. And I would like to end with a notion and something that has inspired me over the generations. A man called Abraham Lincoln in 1861, at one of the most America was at the time at the edge of a war. And he stood and spoke to the nation and said, and I quote, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained us, but it must not break the bounds of our affection. The mystic chords of memory will yet swell again when touched. As surely they will, but by something called the better angels of our nature." So Lincoln's words were not just about the nation in conflict. They were about the eternal tension between division and unity, between self-interest and shared good. And as I look at the world today, at our communities, our politics, and our institutions, I realize that this appeal still echoes today. Every generation must find the courage to awaken the better angels within them. And only the better angels can drive Igwebuike. Collective leadership, in its truest form, is the act of calling forth those better angels. It is seeing leadership not me first, but we together. It is building schools not just for today's children, but for the hope of tomorrow. It is the spirit of Ohafia. It is the Igbo democracy. It is of the civil rights and liberation. And it's one converging truth, that the human story advances when we hold each other's hands and not when we raise them against each other. So today I leave you with this thought. If one broomstick breaks easily and a bunch stands strong, now let's just imagine what a forest of brooms could build. May your leadership summon the better angels of your nature, and may your differences become our design and our diversity, of course, being our strength. And may we never forget, in everything that we've listened to today, that we can make it all together. Moifa! Who? Moifa! Who? What that means is that we win them all. The concept is we. Thank you.